Yes.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Peggy Muhammad
Walaikum
here.
salam.
Okay. Peggy Muhammad here. And I'd like to welcome you to Muhammad's Mosque number 48 to live right, think right, eat right, and do right. And today is going to be how to eat to live part, no, how to eat to live, the basics, part three. 2 days ago, I had part two, and we were joined by our special guest, Sister Erica 2X. And from Sister Erica 2X, we received a very inspiring, motivating story about her journey from a diagnosis of diabetes where she was on insulin and two oral hypoglycemic medicines all the way to nothing in just about 10 months, with also with a 65-pound weight loss. So that story was stunning. It was incredible, but it was, once again, it was bearing witness to the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad that how to eat to live can cure common diseases. Today, we have Brother Gregg Muhammad, and Brother Gregg Muhammad is going to talk to us about his diagnosis. And so I'm going to let you introduce your diagnosis. First, I'm going to say, how are you?
By Allah's grace, I'm doing fine.
And be sure to give Sister Lurleen the greeting of Assalamu alaikum.
I most certainly will. And assalamu alaikum to you and all the listeners and to your family.
Thank you very much. So, Brother Gregg, would you please begin your journey with how to eat to live and coming to uh, beginning with your diagnosis and where you are now?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very kindly. My journey begins with my exercise program. I was walking on a regular basis, 10 to 15 miles, exercising through walking. And I began to notice I had a pain, a nagging pain at the end of my walk. And and it was unnatural because I've been an athlete all my life and I've never had that kind of problem. So I ended up going to a dentist appointment. And after I had some dental work done, the dentist asked me, did I have cancer running in my family? And I thought that was very odd because this is a dental appointment. So after he asked me that, I went and had a checkup. And when I had the checkup done, I was diagnosed with stage four prostate cancer. And when I was diagnosed with this stage four prostate cancer, it was immediately a shock of the hour for myself because I thought I was pretty healthy and ate pretty well and exercised on a regular basis. But apparently, it was some things, and as we get into it, we'll discover that I needed to have been doing that I wasn't doing. And one of the things was getting regular checkups to check and see if anything was out of line, not functioning proper. But when I received this diagnosis, the first thought was, wow, this is heavy news. So I immediately left the doctor's office and I went home and I got on my prayer rug and I turned to Master Farad Muhammad and I said that I don't know how to fix this, but you can. That was the stance that I took then, and that's the stance that I'm on right now. So my immediately and my first reaction was to turn to the God and ask for his guidance, ask for his help, ask for his ability to fix my issue and to lead me on the path that will lead to my recovery. So after I'd done that, I still really didn't know how I wanted to approach this. But the first thing I began to do was recall what I have learned from How to Eat to Live, recall what I have been given over time through knowledge and wisdom, and I clean out my cabinet. I cleaned out everything that I had that I thought had sugar in it, that I had any of the ingredients in it that may contribute to feeding this cancer.
Okay, so
And I didn't know all the things. Go ahead, I'm
would you
sorry.
go into it? Why sugar? What did you know about sugar?
Well, I learned that sugar is one of the main agents that feed cancer. It actually causes it to grow. And anything that have that in it, you are advised to stay away from. Now, we had been advised of that throughout my readings of How to Eat to Live, and through our readings instead of How to Live, it always told us to regulate our food and to stick to simple foods and not a varying choices of food. So that's one of the immediate things that I start to do is that. Then I was introduced by my brother-in-law to a brother who is a doctor, and his name is Dr. Ali, and he have an assistant named Dr. Sharad, and they have a medical practice nationwide, which is their whole practice is based on what they have extracted and learned from How to Eat to Live. So they have
So,
a naturopath practice.
okay, so they're naturopaths. Are they here in Dallas?
Yes, they're here in Dallas. They're here in Dallas. They're in Atlanta. They're in LA, and they're in Houston. So they have a few locations around the country in key markets.
Hmm.
But they are here in Dallas, and Dr. Sherrod is here in Dallas.
Okay,
And I'll have information at some point we could give it.
okay.
But I got introduced to them at this particular point in time prior to getting introduced to them. Now, getting this type news produces a particular mindset in you that you are like, wow, this is serious. What am I going to do? You begin to consider your mortality. You know, can I make it through this? But one of the things that have been the hallmark of the approach to trying to combat this issue have been the proper mindset. It have been a mindset that, okay, I don't know how it's going to get fixed, but I have asked the God to fix it, and there are ways and methods out here for it to be fixed. And so my mindset have been one from that day to right now that this will be fixed. And I'm just striving to obtain all the information, all the methods, and all the programs that are out there that can fix this. But my mindset have never for once been one that this won't be fixed. When I was first introduced to the diagnostics of this problem, the doctor told me, say, well, it's not a cure for it. That's what he said immediately. And my wife was present, and Keidra, her daughter, was present, and we were all there in the room. And that kind of broke her down a little bit because that was kind of brutal just to come out like this, where it's not a cure. And I've said within myself, it angered me more than anything, even though it was shocking news. It was more angering than anything for him to state it like that, especially in the presence of them. And my mindset was that you're not the creator of me or the maker of me. So how could you give me that type death sentence when you don't control and have that type power over my life? So you can't do that to somebody else's servant. So I didn't necessarily accept it like that. What may he have intended for it to do to me emotionally, it didn't work because that wasn't my mentality. My mentality is that the Lord of the world's master for Muhammad control all these things, and it's up to him whether I live or die.
Yes, sir.
So I didn't accept that type of diagnostics from him then or now.
So you got on your prayer rug, but then you began but then you developed an attitude that you can't tell me what the creator can do for me. And then what?
Right, right. Well, I recall the Honorable Elijah Muhammad saying in How to Eat to Live that the stomach and the mind work very similar. And he have also taught us that thoughts shape reality. So as a man thinking in his heart, so is he. So in my condition that I learned of, I know that out of everything and all things, that there's nothing more powerful than the will that's inside you, the will that's given to you by Allah. Matter of fact, that have been one of the greatest learning tools or learning events of this whole process, that I'm learning about the power of the mind and the will, and how you could better your health based on how you think. You could feel better based on how you think. You could function better based on how you think. At a certain point in this process, and we'll get to it a little later, it was the thought process that helped me begin to be able, because I got to a point, and I'm thinking of getting ahead of myself, where I became incapacitated. My symptoms moved from the prostate to my spine. And so this was before I actually went on had an emergency operation. But before I went to this operation, at that point, I could not walk. I could not stand. I could not move. I was actually in a wheelchair. And this was prior to having the operation. And that in itself was an experience. And all of it is pretty much an experience that relate back to what we have been taught, what we have been given, and what we have learned in How to Eat to Live. My
So,
experience with not being good. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, because what I just want to know, so are you telling us that it went from the prostate to the spine?
Yes, it moved. They say it mitigated, so it moved from the prostate to the spine.
Mm-hmm.
And when it did that, it affected a couple of the discs in my back. And at that point, I was on a herbal treatment, but it had advanced so far when it moved to the spine, that all my vitals and all my blood work and all my gauges was really fine, because of how I was eating, because of my eating one meal a day. I had a regimen of eating where even some of the things that are lawful for us to eat under the circumstance of what I was dealing with, many of those had to be cut back. So I had to have a diet or regimen that was one or two different foods. Like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad saying How to Eat to Live, you don't need a variety of foods. You just need that would help, that would give you energy of life. So
Did you?
my menu was that. Yes, ma'am.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, did you have any supervision from a dietitian or anything?
I had supervision from my herbalist, my doctor, Dr. Sherrod. Matter of fact, I have a entire regiment list that she gave me of all the foods that I shouldn't eat and
Mm-hmm.
all of the foods that I need to eat. And one thing that the reason I even accepted to get under the guidance of them were because I had the information there, introductory information, it talked about how all of what they present is rooted and derived from How to Eat to Live, from
Oh,
those teachings.
that
And
doesn't
it talked
seem like
about,
that doesn't sound like
ma'am,
a coincidence.
oh no.
Sounds like an
So
answer to
this,
a prayer.
oh, it absolutely was the answer to a prayer, because I pretty much I knew I wanted to fight this. I knew that there are methods out there, but I didn't really, when you hit with a ton of bricks, something like this, it's like the Quran says, it's the shock of the hour. You really don't. Well, how am I actually going to fight this? What am I actually going to do? I know I have how to live, but how do I take that science and apply it to combating something that's so violent as cancer, something that is have a track record of taking so many people out so quick. So I was really kind of so I was in the shock of the hour. So my brother-in-law found out that I had cancer, and he was going to Atlanta for the weekend, and he was going to meet with Dr. Abdul Ali, and he met with him, and he told him so. What the brother did for me, not only did he introduce me to the brother, but he purchased all of my treatment plan off the bat for me. The initial treatment plan that I needed, he paid for that out of his pocket for me. Now you're talking about an answer to a prayer. I was looking back and I was just thinking a lot, and I said, wow, how did all this come about? And to me, that was the biggest sign that, don't worry about it. You're in good hands. You're in the hands of Allah.
Okay.
So the brother did that for me in my process of combating this scourge began. But even though I had this great plan and I had this treatment, it did my vital signs and my blood work and my blood pressure and everything. It was the best it had ever been in my life from following these herbals and eating that regimen like that. But unfortunately, the cancer moved to my spine. So when it moved to my spine, I had to have an emergency operation, and I went to the hospital. They did the emergency operation, but even prior to doing the emergency operation, we're talking about the answer to a prayer. My situation was very similar to the minister. My visit to the hospital, the minister says there's always an angel present. He had an angel present when he went to the hospital, and my physician ended up being an angel.
Okay.
So the brother came to meet me prior to the surgery, and uh, he whispered in my ear first that now you know who the surgeon is here. He said it's not me. He's just using my hands. And I said, yeah, I know Master Farad Muhammad is the surgeon. So he told me that. Then he gave me a verse from the Bible, which is Exodus 25 and 23 that says you should be healed by your food and your water, and your land should be healed. And I said, wow, I didn't know that's what it was because under the circumstance, I didn't recall the verse he gave me. But I had his assistant to write it down because I wanted to go back and see, what it said, as I read it. So I went back and read it, and I said, wow, I said, man, this is the answer to a prayer. But that was good medicine practice of what he did. He put me in the right spirit and the right mood to go into surgery, which lasted 5 hours. And so after I came out of the surgery by Allah's grace, I still couldn't walk. I still couldn't move a limb. I still couldn't move a muscle. But we have the teachings, and we have also one of the things is that before us we have the greatest example of how Allah can help you overcome anything in the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. If we have studied his journey, we have watched where Allah had brought him from. It was a time when he was off his feet and couldn't walk. But then I saw the minister at the national training session after he had not been on his feet for a long time, standing up teaching for 2 or 3 hours, and I was amazed at that. I saw that, and then you begin to see the minister stand up more and more and become more and more mobile. So to me, in my mind, reflecting back on that, I say, oh, that's an example right there. Show you how Allah, right before your eyes, show you that what I do for him, I would do for you. So when I was in the hospital, I was laying there, couldn't move a toenail. And I began to think back on the teachings where it says that Allah created himself from nothing. So he had to overcome all the forces and everything. So I was laying there and I began to think, well, my mind is absolutely the master of this body. So I began to think on the circulation of the blood, the movement of the nervous system, and I began to think in a positive way of trying to move my toes, move my feet. And at the time, I couldn't do either. But the more and more I practiced on thinking on that, laying there in that bed, after about a week, I was moving a big toe. After about a couple weeks, I could raise the feet up. After, this is absolute actual fact. So after a while, my extremities had begun to come back. I couldn't lift a leg. I couldn't hold a leg up. I couldn't bend a knee, but I could move my joints to a degree. And that was from positive thinking. That was from thinking on the power of Allah that's in us. And I'm not just saying this out of a story being told. I'm saying this out of this experience that I have just experienced and have absolutely applied it based on the thinking that we have been given. I remember the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said in the tape series or the series that he did, How to Give Birth to a God, he talked about how he thought all the way back into the womb of his mother and how he talked about the shapes of his hand and the forming of his hands. So I thought back on that teaching and I said, well, then why did he give us that teaching? If it's not to inspire us to try and apply what we have learned and what we have been given.
So what
So
so what did
that
you
was it.
go ahead? So what did you tell did you have a plan and did you relate your plan to Sister Lurleen?
Well, Sister Lurleen have been a part of the plan every step of the way. Matter of fact, she have cared for me like you care for a baby because I couldn't do anything for myself at all. So Sister Lurleen have been above and beyond in everything that, matter of fact, it was her brother that introduced the regiment to me. So everything that I have needed, she have made sure that I have it. Uh, at a particular point, my upper extremities were fine, so I could actually feed myself. But other than that, I couldn't do anything. And Sister Lurleen have been there to do all that for me.
Uh,
She would get me out the bed, get me in the bed, turn me over. I mean, so far and beyond. I mean, this sister is absolutely a gem to me. That's why I advised the brothers in the talk that we had in the class that, brother, if you, the first thing, get you a MGT, get you a wife, get you someone that could be there with you, care for you, and you do the same for them. Because outside of Allah and His Christ, if it's not for this sister, I probably wouldn't be sitting here doing this interview at this point
mm.
because she have been everything to me along those lines.
Master Farad Muhammad, and I'm sure you've heard this, that in the Supreme Wisdom, he talks about what the MGT is to do. And we are charged with rearing our children and taking care of our husbands.
That's right. And she have fit that 100% because some of the examples of this been a long, tedious process, and I could see that the energy that you get from certain foods by eating it, the lack of energy that you have from eating the wrong foods. That had I been eating anything other than how to eat to live, I wouldn't have advanced to the point now to where I am, where I can stand, I could walk, I could move, because my earlier stages, matter of fact, the one of the physical therapists told my wife that he would never walk again. And she said, well, you better not tell my husband that
Mm.
because she know my mentality and my thinking and her thinking is the same. We trust and believe in Allah, and we believe everything that He has said. And we believe that if you practice it and you carry it into practice, that it would manifest itself into reality, and it have. So she told him, you better not tell my husband that, because first of all, she know that anything that's negative like that, I'm not going to accept it and I'm not trying to hear it, because that's a person that's talking without a base of faith or a base of reality. It's a point that your faith go to past faith to knowing. When you have experienced the majesty of Allah, then it's a point you get to that ain't just that you have the faith, it's just because you have seen it. He have proved it over and over and over, not just in this circumstance, but throughout my life. So when Allah said that he say be it is, it is. So
Mm.
uh after he told my wife that, and we started a physical therapy program for about 3 months. And this was after I had began to where I could raise a leg. But the point I was about to make is that at a certain stage and point, I could be riding in a vehicle, I could be laying in the bed. I didn't have the strength to hold. If my knees was propped up in there, I had to raise them up with my hands.
Mm.
Anytime I moved my legs, I had to move my legs with my hand. So I was saying that this has been a treacherous process, a journey, behind the scenes where nobody see it. Okay, Paul coming in, so I knocked it off. Behind the scenes, see, so when I couldn't move my legs, so it was my wife that would put me in the chair. Oh, we knocked off. Okay, I'm back. Did that flick off?
No, it just turned, but
Oh,
we
okay,
never
yes.
lost.
Yes, ma'am. But yeah, it was my wife that would put me in the wheelchair, get me out of the wheelchair. Um, I didn't have any movement in my legs, so she would get. We had a device. I never brought it to the meetings, but with that wheelchair, I had what is called a sliding board, and I got really good at using the sliding board because I had upper body strength, but I had no strength in my lower body. And
Oh,
so I would use the sliding board to transport myself from a chair to the bed, back to the chair. So, but in that process, it was my wife that would always pick me up, lift me up, and encourage me to keep pushing and keep going.
how inspiring she is. And but I
Apple.
right now I'd like to find out what it is that you ate and how she prepared it, who gave you, who helped you with that, how she prepared it, and just the food that you ate. And did you do any fasting? I wouldn't.
Well, it's fasting that's implemented into the regimen,
Hmm.
but at the particular from that time to even to now, some of the fasting I didn't necessarily do because I had gotten so small.
Yeah.
I was at 215, but my weight dropped to 140 pounds,
Wow.
and my muscles and calf muscles, which was always big, actually turned to a bag, just an empty bag with anything in it, without anything in it. And so, but my eating were primarily at a particular point was protein oriented food because protein is a fighter of cancer. So everything is protein. We're not necessarily meat eaters, but under the circumstances, I was prescribed to eat bison
Hmm.
as a source of protein.
Hmm.
So I was eating bison, and she would prepare the bison for me. And the other thing I would eat plenty of was broccoli,
Okay.
fresh broccoli. Was fresh broccoli because it's a fighter also of cancer. And I would eat broccoli. I would eat. Uh, I have a. Have you ever heard the term kelp noodle? Kelp,
No, I
yeah,
don't.
kelp noodles. They are a natural processed noodle, and it's not a processed noodle, but it's a natural style noodle
Mm-hmm.
that I ate. And you would mix it with mixed vegetables, carrots, and bell pepper, and it was certain peppers that I could eat, but at a certain point, and I was recommended to eat no bread at all because most breads are bad and it feeds cancer. So I would eat but and the reason I'm saying is that as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad saying how to eat to live, this was a regimen that I ate on a daily basis and it didn't vary for months.
Oh, wow.
For
Okay.
months.
I can
Yeah, for
imagine
months. I got so sick of eating.
that
I got
bison.
so
Golly. And then you had to
yeah.
eat bison. Is that a kind of low fat, lean kind of meat?
It is, and also the fish that I was recommended to eat was sea bass.
Okay.
Yeah, sea bass, very expensive, very good though, and salmon. So I was eating salmon anyway. So sea bass, salmon, red snapper
Ah.
were the fish that I ate and do eat right now.
Hmm.
And the bison, the broccoli, and the rice that I was recommended to eat is what is the basmati
Okay.
rice that it, yeah, that rice I could eat. And I could not eat any eggs. I really couldn't eat any tomatoes. It's a lot of stuff that's good for me, but under the circumstance at that stage, I was recommended not to eat it until I got stronger, got weight on me,
Okay.
and my body began to function a little better. So up until my body started functioning a little better, I stuck to a regimen for 6 to 7, almost 8 months of eating almost the same food on a daily basis.
May I
And it
interrupt again?
become a psychological, man.
No, go ahead. Because the next
No,
I want I wanted to ask you, when did you realize you were actually getting better?
um, I think I began to realize that I was getting better when I started to put on a little weight, and I began my movement got better, and I went and had I had checkups
Mhm.
done,
Mhm.
and at one particular point, I had PSA reading, which is a prostate reading, where my reading was over 2,500. And after I began to practice this regimen and go through this program, I went back and had scans and had readings done where it dropped down to 1,500.
So what should
And
your PSA? What should it be?
it should actually be zero point 0. It should be a reading at all. That means
Okay.
that you're clear.
Okay.
But after a minute, after a while, and when I say a minute, I mean a period of months, it dropped from 1,500 to 1.26. So I went back to the doctor and he was like, wow. He said, that's spectacular. He said, whatever it is you're doing, keep doing. And so after that, I went back actually last month and I had a reading and done, and it was 0.20.
Well, is this the
So it
same?
helps drop.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. This is not the same doctor. See, I have a hormone therapist doctor too that I see,
Mhm.
and this particular doctor is the one that have been monitoring my readings and my PSA levels and my blood level and my iron level and my whatever the minerals are in your body. He monitors those things and through the blood work. And so this is the doctor that I've been dealing with on that level. And what he have been doing, he have been giving me a treatment that basically initially was for maintaining the or I guess corralling the cancer so it wouldn't spread in my body. And the hormone therapy and the homeopathics and how the to live process have been that which is attacking the elimination of the cancer. So that's where we are, and that's the process that we're in.
It
But
sounds like
key to all of it, ma'am,
it sounds like you're doing whole
I
food,
am
nothing
everything.
processed.
Right, the whole food, and I guess I hadn't mentioned that absolutely everything I eat is organic.
Oh,
You know, I don't eat. Yeah, I eat all organic. I just rarely. It's a rare occasion I eat anything that's not organic. So yeah, so I have as my weight have begun to pick up, then the second phase of this program in terms of dealing with there is a fasting day inherited in it
oh,
where you should fast at least 1 day a week, and you also have a juice day.
mm,
And when I say juice day, that's like natural juice blended, you know, in the mixer, your blender, and stuff like beets, and I have a regimen that I drink. The turmeric, ginger, beets, and cinnamon that I use to drink to also to fight this condition. And I drink a good dose of that on a daily basis.
mm.
So it's all organic, it's all natural, and it's all in tune with eating proper. So one of the main things that I have been learning, and then one of the things I have learned in dealing with a lot of the medical physicians and people, that a lot of them don't necessarily, unless you just know or mention it, give you a leeway into, okay, well, change this to eat, change that to eat. Now, the dietitian, when I was in the hospital,
Oh, I think he froze. If you can hear me, Brother Greg, you froze. Your picture is frozen. And I'm going to wait to see if you can come back. If not, I'll start doing things to see if you can come back. Let's see. I tell you what, I'm going to call
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm on the telephone. If
Right.
you would try to come back in,
I
either,
was trying to make it say something about, I don't know why my phone would be hot. I'm not outside. I'm
okay,
inside and I'm in a cool environment.
okay,
So let me go back to it.
okay. So maybe you could go out and come back in.
I'll do that.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'll get back and I'll just fill in some information and then I'm sure you will be back.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so while Brother Greg is trying to come back in, I want to go over what's been going on. He said you see, he had the right thoughts, and it didn't seem like at any time he was unmoved to ensure that he would be healed. And it also tells me how important the way of eating is to healing yourself from a condition. So last 2 days ago, we talked about being the diabetes being removed on diet. And this time we're talking about the importance, the significance of eating the right food, not just during his treatment, but prior to his treatment. And and the support that he got from his wife, from his MGT, from that MGT. And so he's right. It's so very important. And so there is another thing that he said that he seemed like it seemed as though he was doing everything right, except he wasn't getting routine checkups. And I did do a video on the importance of routine checkups. And so we know that in our community, that the incidence of new diagnosis of prostate cancer is very high. And we know that the minister had prostate cancer. And then it kind of took a toll on him before he was treated successfully. And because that's something that is very, oh boy, I can't imagine what that could be like. Now, this happened in my family, my husband's family, my late husband's father had prostate cancer, and my father had prostate cancer. My father had surgery, but his father chose not to have surgery. And his doctor told him that it was, if you catch prostate cancer in time, that it has a rate of uh, treatment and successful treatment if you just find it in time. So that's very important. And if you heard Brother Gregg, he did say that one of the things that he ensured was to remove the sugar from his diet because he knows that sugar fuels cancer. Cancer lives off sugar. And I have a question that I want to ask him. And I remember that I had fallen in February. I fell down the stairs. I got my foot caught up in the strings of my backpack. I was holding it down. I got the strings caught up. I got my foot caught up in the backpack and I fell down some stairs and I broke my ankle in 3 places. And I do remember that when I came back, I saw Brother Gregg in a wheelchair. And then I asked Sister, uh, how was he doing? And she said, oh, well, actually, he may be in a wheelchair, but he's getting better. And then as time progressed, he came back and he was on crutches. And now he's not on crutches anymore. He's walking. I thought that was absolutely intriguing. And I think this whole idea of being able to tell us about this process is really stunning. So, and he's already given us a lot of information. And the important thing about this treatment also, as in with this treatment of the sister and her diabetes, is that they both had physicians, people that, professional people who took care of them that really helped them. So there was one doctor, he said that's, no, 2 doctors that said that he wasn't going, that he may not make it through. But then there was another group that said, yeah, and they helped him through it through diet and exercise. So this is a wonderful thing. And contact Brother Gregg.
Yes, I was about to text you. When I pressed the try to get back in, it said invalid meeting ID.
Okay, so let's see. Did you get in with the link, or did you just get in with the numbers?
Whether the link, the second link you sent, the one that
Uh-huh.
was, because the first one was wrong, but with the second one, when I pressed on it, that's when it said that. The first one, it says meeting does not exist.
Yeah, because that was the wrong link. But what I'm going to do is for you, I want you to go look in the text that I sent you and just put
Yes,
in the numbers. Don't
put
do the
in
links, just put in the numbers.
put the numbers in the text.
No, okay. I sent you some numbers in the I
Oh,
sent you the text. There's the meeting ID and then there's the meeting passcode.
right, I have that.
Okay, go into the Zoom join uh, and
Okay,
then put in those numbers,
right.
and then you should come up.
Okay,
I just love being able to present people who can bear witness to the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And as I said, I have my own story where I can bear witness. And I've never been a heavy woman. I've always been very, very small, very, very thin. And so when my doctor told me that I had diabetes, I was really surprised. I could hardly believe it. But then I understood uh, the kind of habits that were against being healthy, or the kind of habits that supported the diagnosis of diabetes. And so then I began to do the diet in earnest. And with the diet in earnest and continuing my exercise and getting sleep and trying to deal with some stressful things that the doctor said to me one day, and I was least expecting this. He said, "You don't have to be on the medicine anymore." Ah, there he is. Looks like he's okay. Good. You're back again. Go ahead. Okay. Now I can't hear you, so turn on your audio, please.
Unmute. So,
Oh,
are we good?
yes, we're good. So you can go ahead and you can finish up your story, and then I have some questions.
Just
Questions.
a minute.
Okay, go ahead.
So, so one of the, I guess, the basic things through the whole process is that the positive mindset of my wife throughout this whole process, and keeping a positive mindset myself, um, following the regimen of how to eat to live and the regimen that I was given by my herbalist, and just practice it in a real sense on a regular basis. And I have began. You asked me a question before we left. When did I realize I began to feel better or do better? Uh, After doing this regimen for a while, and when I say while, I mean several months, I began to feel the energy and the vitality coming back in me from practicing this eating regimen. And after I began to get that kind of strength back, when you get positive energy like that, you know that it helps you with your thinking. It helps you with your ability to reason, because one of the main things I have learned through this process that pain, pain it affect everything with your life, especially your thinking. A lot of people fall into despair because of pain, and just having the mentality to overcome pain itself is a victory within itself, because at a certain point in this process, pain was so bad that if it wasn't for the ginger and the different herbs that I was taking, it would have been pretty much unbearable. So went through a certain level of pain, a certain threshold of pain that I'd never been to before in my life. And I'm talking about over a spirit extended like little period of time. And I'm grateful to Allah that I'm able to sit here and say this without being in pain. Be able to sit here and say it without feeling bad in any kind of way, because it was some days I felt really bad and really low and was at some low points. And Allah had brought me from those low points, from the door of death, to where I am right now, and I'm grateful. So I guess that's uh, pretty much my story in a lot of sense right there.
So, brother, it sounds like you had what we call a multidisciplinary approach. So you're a naturopath, you had a dietitian, and you had Allah. I mean,
Hmm.
he was in control of it all. But
Right, right.
your doctor, your dietitian, your physical therapist, anyone else that you had a hormone therapist.
Hormone therapist, yes. And Dr. Cowie, that's my hormone therapist.
Mhm.
So it's been a combination approach, because at certain points, certain things was absolutely necessary. At a particular point, my hormone therapist was vital, because my body had gotten to a point where it had built up inflammation. And he had some things in his program that he gave me that relieved me of the tremendous pain that I had till I got back to the point where it could be manageable. Because it was days where the pain was so bad that it was, like I said, pretty much unbearable on a certain level. But you know that one thing, you got to bear it and you got to hold on if you're going to go to the next level. And that means the next level is survival. So, yeah, it was a multi-discipline approach and have been, still is. And right now I stick to my regiment, you know.
Okay, so this is the question I have. So from the time you found out until now, how long has that been?
There have been, what is it, right at 2.5 years. I was first diagnosed with this, and what this is 24.
Yeah.
Uh, when was the? Because it's the last Savior Day. The last Savior's Day I went to was the Savior's Day. 20, 124, 123, 22.
Okay.
It had to be. Were we in Detroit or Chicago? We was in Detroit,
Mm,
right?
I think that it was Detroit.
Yeah, it was
Because
Detroit.
I think because I was there, I think in 22, I didn't go in 23, I didn't go in 24. So 22, I believe was, no, it was Chicago was in 22.
Yeah, it was Chicago.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
it wasn't Detroit, it was Chicago.
Yeah, so that's the last Savior's Day I attended. And just prior to Savior's Day is when I was diagnosed with that.
Oh,
Yeah,
Savior's Day 22 to
yes,
24.
yes, ma'am.
Oh boy.
So yeah, so it's been right at going on 3 years now.
What is your advice to other brothers who might receive this same diagnosis? What would you do for them? What would you tell them?
I would first thing I would tell them is consult Allah. First of all, you know, first and foremost, and if you say after they received it though,
Mhm,
but
mhm,
prior to receiving it,
mhm.
brothers need to go and get checked, have
Okay.
their vitals checked, make sure that you do your pre-proper planning.
Okay.
But if it's after the fact, I would seek out first of all, recall, remember, and start practicing everything you know about how to live because this absolutely is a lifesaver. Absolutely. So everything you know about how, if you need to go and dust off your books of how to eat to live, get in them and go in it with a different. You will have a different mindset. I can tell you that now. You'll go back in and you'll see things that you never saw before, or you just looked over before. But that would be my main advice: is to do that, and then seek out you a alternate form of treatment because one of the things that I found out in dealing with the system, medical system, and I was at a really low point, at a point where you're really hurting, and you had certain doctors trying to sell programs like chemotherapy.
Mhm.
I mean, you're in such a weak state, you're in a hurting state, you're in a vulnerable state. And I saw this one particular lady, and I told my wife, I said, don't even let her near me. I don't want to hear nothing that she's selling because she was absolutely trying to sell to me, well, you got to get chemo, right? I mean, this is day two. I mean, and so you're caught at a vulnerable point in time. And I'm sure that they realize that you're thinking about your mortality and your survival. So that's when they salespeople go into high gear even in the operating room, they go into high gear trying to sell chemotherapy. Every single thing that I heard was chemo this, chemo that, radiation this, radiation that. So I had already informed my wife that I wasn't interested in any of those from the
Okay.
very outset. So So I would advise brothers to find an alternate means of attacking the cancer that attack you, because there are plenty of them out here.
So would you recommend your physician group to those who might
I'm
develop that in the future?
I
Dr.
most
Ali?
I most certainly will.
Okay.
You know, one of the things that helped uh, bring me even on board. First thing that helped brought me on board was I read his material in this pamphlet, and he was talking about how everything that he developed and presented is rooted in how he to live, and he was teaching about how all disease are healed where they start at on a molecular level. So he started going into that science and that knowledge, and I read his information. I said, "Oh, well, I could work with this." Because what he's teaching is right in line with the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So that's one of the things that caused me to choose him. But I would recommend, highly recommend this brother
Hmm.
and his the associates to anyone that's, matter of fact, not only will I highly recommend it, I have already recommended him to several brothers and sisters. We recently lost a sister in Monroe, Louisiana. May Allah be pleased with her, named Sister Kim.
Hmm.
And she passed away, and I had recommended him to her, but it had gotten to the point where it was almost just too late, where they had been bouncing around for a few years with different doctors, different hospitals, and stuff. And by the time I heard about it and we heard about each other, it was a little late. But Dr. Ali healed his mother from cancer completely. She had breast cancer and had spread throughout her body, and they had sent her home just to pass away.
Oh, oh.
Yeah, and from that point, in 3 months, he had her up and walking, had her up moving around, and she's doing this. Have been 20 years later, she's doing fine. Dr. Shara, who is the one that's live here in Dallas, or from here in Dallas, she healed her father completely.
Mm.
And she was telling me her father ain't halfway followed the regiment. She said because it's things he's eating that he really shouldn't eat. But the main thing is that she said this outright. She said just from the outset of changing your diet,
Hmm.
it's half the battle. And from talking and dealing with my PCP, and when we first met, he was saying you have such a positive attitude and positive outcome. He said make sure you keep that positive mentality. He said because that's half the cure. It's the way you think. You know, half of the battle is how you see it, how you approach it, and how you think about it. So I know that it's a threatening, a life threatening disease. I know how bad it is, but I know Allah is Akbar. And I'm sorry, good.
No, I was just going to say, I was going to agree with you. No, it can't
Yeah,
be as bad. It can't be
right. But
as
it's
good.
it's
It can't be as
you know
bad as, and I mean bad in the
right. No, I
sense
know what
that
you mean. You
of being great.
mean right, right.
Nothing that's bad is as bad as Allah, I tell you.
Right. And one of the things that I experienced since we're speaking on mentality, um, while I was in the hospital, I think I almost turned into like a telephone evangelist because people were calling me to check to see how I was doing, how I was feeling, what mood I was in, and I end up counseling people on the phone. I'm talking about folks from all over the country, our family members, friends, people that I know in the nation. And they left away from they a couple people told me said, "Man, I called to check on you, and I'm leaving away from you feeling better." I
Okay.
say, "Well, that's the objective." So
Oh,
my attitude towards this have been to be positive. To I know that it's threatened, I know that it's real, but I know that Allah has the power over any and everything, and that if we keep our positive reality, our positive mindset, that help us fight these battles, that help us overcome this. I'm not in gloom and gloom and haven't been. Not where the days of pain I was in, not gloom and doom, but I was in pain. But I
Mm.
haven't been in a downtrodden type mode type mentality at no point other than the pain, to be honest. So I have tried to keep that type mentality because I know what it does for me because your cells are affected by how you think. That's one of the things that brother went into his and like we train our muscles and we have muscle memory, we
Hmm.
can train ourselves, but it comes through our thought process and how we think. So we shouldn't take lightly the things that we read and how they live and that we have read in these teachings about how thought change reality and our ability to try to start practicing it. Many of the things we have, we don't know how it works because we haven't tried to practice it or apply it. But when you practically apply it, it actually works.
So it sounds like you just gave yourself over to the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. From the very beginning, that's why I told you my prayer. My exact words to Master Farad Muhammad was that I can't fix this, but you can.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, who else you gonna go to? You got to go to the one that could fix it.
All
That's
praises
what
due.
I have done. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Brother Gregg, thank you so much for coming in and spending this time, your very valuable time, to tell the audience, to tell our viewers about your amazing, stunning, incredible journey from your diagnosis of prostate cancer to what you are doing now. So
Thank
thank you
you.
much.
All praise due to Allah. I'm absolutely humble and grateful, and thank you for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. So there you have it, brothers and sisters, this wonderful journey of healing, treatment. I don't know what you would call it. Um, would you say that you were healed?
I say that I'm being healed.
There we have it, a wonderful process of being healed through with the addition of how to eat to live. So, brother, living right, you've been thinking right, eating right, and doing right. May Allah bless you and your lovely wife. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Um, hold on.
Okay. I don't know how to exit.
Whoops. I like to do my sign off.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay. Now,
Yes, ma'am.
live right, think right, eat right, do right. Assalamu alaikum.
Do right, think right, do right. Wa alaikum salam.